The coming decade of spatial computing. I'm Tonya Hall, and joining me is Robert Scoble, Chief Strategy Officer at Infinite Retina. Welcome, Robert.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
Talking geek talk.
It's always fun to talk to you, Robert. But for somebody who maybe doesn't know about the work that you do, what is Infinite Retina doing?
I do strategy with Irina Cronin, and we're working with big companies and a few small ones on spatial computing, which is computing that a robot, a human, or a virtual being can move through. So something like this, Microsoft HoloLens would be a great example of spatial computing. Yeah, we're doing really interesting stuff and seeing some mind-blowing new things that are coming over the next 3 to 4 years.
So let's talk about that. Forecasters are predicting that spatial computing market is expected to grow from about, I don't know, $17 billion in 2019 to over $160 billion in 2023. That's an order of magnitude increase in just 4 years. Does
Yeah,
that sound reasonable? And if so, what's driving this kind of growth?
Apple.
Robert?
Apple. I mean, most of that sales increase could be one company, right? If Apple comes out with a product that really makes sense, Apple has 450 stores around the world. They have a brand that people like on their face. They have Siri. They have integration with all these new things like these new AirPods, right? And they have the market capability of explaining it to people and showing people why they want a computer on their face, which most people don't yet know they want, right? This is going to be a real marketing challenge for Apple and Sony and Facebook and others, then Microsoft, to convince us that we want a computer on our face. And certainly I don't want something this big and ugly, even though I bought my own HoloLens. That's not going to be a consumer product, right? This is great if you're working at an oil refinery or something, but if you're walking around a shopping mall, you're not going to wear something that big and ugly. But if
So,
you think about it, I mean, these new AirPods, right? These have more computing inside than an iPhone 4 had inside, right? So you can start thinking about, oh, the phone went from there to here, right, in 5 or 6 years. Well, what happens if it goes from here down to the glasses, right? It's coming, and it's coming pretty soon. We're seeing tastes of it. I mean, the HoloLens is tastes of how the computer is shrinking, but it needs to go 1/10 the size of a HoloLens to make it a consumer product.
so then you, in your opinion, what are the most exciting spatial computing use cases then in the consumer and enterprise and science and research markets?
Well, I was just in Rome, and I was using my iPhone, and Google Maps now is using augmented reality to navigate you around the street. That's spatial computing. It's actually using the camera to figure out what street you're on along with the GPS. And it's actually showing you on the streets, go this way, right? And it's really amazing. And that's just a little taste of what you're going to get if you have glasses on, and you're going to be able to talk to the computer all the time, whether it's Siri or Alexa or this new Facebook device, which we're talking about a little bit later. We're going to be able to see new kinds of information on top of the world, right? And we're going to be able to play new kinds of games. I just got Minecraft Earth on my iPhone, by the way. We should pull that out and start playing that. And so that's a game that's spatial computing that you're playing as you move around the world. You have to actually go walk down the street to collect things, right? And as you move the camera around, it actually changes the screen on the phone. And so that's a good taste of what you're going to be able to get. Now imagine that you have that on glasses where you can use your hands to interact with or shoot or throw, right? And a lot of new entertainment's coming, a lot of new games are coming, a lot of new education apps are coming. And we're getting tastes of it in HoloLens. It's just, this is $3,500 for the new one, and it's too big and heavy for somebody to wear very long. It's great for a surgeon to do a new kind of surgery, but they're only using it for 5 or 10 minutes. They're not trying to use it for hours, right? So we need it to shrink And the shrinking is coming. Remember, our first mobile phones used to be big, big things that only real estate agents used, right? And they were big things that you had to put in a car, in the center of the car, and it had to be installed in your car. Now everybody carries something that looks like an iPhone around, right?
So I have a question. Are you still playing Pokemon Go? You
Oh
just
yeah, a little bit.
a little bit.
This week it's Minecraft Earth, because Minecraft Earth is sort of more fun this week because it's brand new. Yeah.
When you mentioned that, I was like, I bet he still plays Pokemon. I liked Pokemon, but it was a little addictive. Okay,
Yeah.
so
It's
let's
fun to play while I walk around, and it incents you to go on walks, right? Which is, my Apple Watch is complaining that I didn't complete my circles today, right? So now I have to go and play some Minecraft while walking around and complete my circles. Yeah.
so so let's talk about
I'm being programmed
what
by
what I know. Let's talk about what we need to make some of these things happen, right? We need to be able to be connected better. We've talked about the bandwidth. So what kind of role is 5G going to
huge,
play in supporting the growth of spatial computing?
huge. But let's talk about the optics. So I don't know if you can see through these Hall lenses, right? But the HoloLens has optics that put a virtual image on top of the real world, and they're really blurry, and compared to your, a 4K, really sharp screen, and they're not very bright, so you can't use them in bright sunlight very well, and you can't read text on them. And those three things are all going to get fixed in the next 2 years. I'm seeing prototypes from Israel and from other places that are fixing those three problems. And Apple is really close to solving those three problems. Then you think about, all right, now I have a sharp image in front of me, on me. Now I need cameras, and I need processing for the AI that's going to work sort of like a self-driving car. In fact, the technology is very similar in an augmented reality glass. This HoloLens has 4 cameras on the front that make a 3D image of the world around the wearer of this. And it has a lot of little triangles. So it builds a point cloud of your walls and your desk around you. And then it puts little triangles everywhere on top of that, which is how it puts augmented stuff on. Minecraft Earth, those are all little triangles, right? Triangles, polygons, need to be processed. So you need a GPU. Apple has a GPU built into their phone, right? And there's a GPU built into this HoloLens. Once you process it and you get a good image and you get virtual things coming out of the walls and stuff like that, now you want to build interactivity to the world, where I want to work with you on a 3D skyscraper or a car design or something like that. Now I need low latency, high bandwidth to send you a lot of polygons in a way that doesn't have any delay. And that's what 5G gives us. 5G gives us the ability to send a lot of polygons back and forth really quickly with very, very little delay, very little latency. It also solves a third problem of being able to use it in a football stadium, which, I went to the World Series at AT&T Park, and I couldn't even make a phone call at the World Series because 40,000 people were all trying to make a phone call or do Instagram all at the same time. And we flooded the cell towers. And once the cell towers are flooded, no more packets getting through. 5G fixes that problem as well. So it's real important for stadiums, real important for downtowns. It's real important for VR and AR, where you're going to send a lot of polygons up to a cloud system or to each other, and want to play new kinds of games like football or shooting games and not have any latency, not have any delays. Because if I'm throwing you a Frisbee in a game like Rec Room in VR, I don't want that Frisbee to stop in midway. I want it to go right to your hands, right? So yeah.
Thinking back to the initial Google Glass experience, what changes in society will have to happen to accept a significant number of people walking around wearing these kinds of smart glasses, even the more advanced ones that you and I have talked offline about?
Google Glass exposed a couple of new social contract problems that we didn't know really existed. So we as humans evolved over millions of years to look into each other's eyes, to see, are you paying attention to me? Are you trustworthy? Are you lying to me, right? Are you friend or foe? We evolved over millions of years to instantly build a connection with each other by looking at each other's eyes. And now I had a little thing blinking up here, lighting up my eye and changing that contract, and you didn't know what the heck I was doing or what information I had on you. It brought a new information asymmetry problem where I had information on you that uh, you didn't know what I had on you, right? If you didn't have one of these Google glasses on and I had one, your mind went straight to Black Mirror, thinking I had, you know, all sorts of secret data about you in my glasses, and you're like, I don't like that, right? And so you started blaming the camera. The camera got over-blamed, over-indexed on, because you didn't know how to explain this information asymmetry problem, and you didn't know how to explain the social contract problem. So you start blaming, what's that camera doing? Your mind went to the camera. And all three of those problems are going to come back in the next decade, that we're going to have to figure out, how are we going to, are we going to have a slide on the camera to hide the camera to take care of that problem? Are we all going to have these glasses on so that we all have no asymmetry anymore? We all have the same information about each other, and we all understand what they do. And Apple could do that, right? Apple could get all of us to buy new products all in one day, right? Or at least enough of us so that we understand what it is to, have glasses on. And then we're going to have a lot of utility, which the Google Glass did not actually have that much utility. The hype of Google Glass was that there was, it was like jacking into God, and God was just giving me all this information. The truth, it was a little tiny screen that you could barely read. Right? Well, the screens that are coming soon are actual big, really bright, really sharp screens. And sometimes soon after that, contact lenses that do the same thing, that give us information right into our eyes. And there's going to be a lot of utility that comes with that because of spatial computing, because the computing that understands the world is also evolving very, very quickly, partly due to the work that's being done in autonomous cars, and robots, right?
So you and I have talked about the fact that some of these things just aren't happening in the time frame that we hope or anticipate, and that they're much further out. So what are the technological bottlenecks today in spatial computing, whether it's either hardware or software, that's
It,
going to allow us to leap forward once we overcome them?
it's really interesting. I talked with a couple of founders of Pixar, and he said, we always knew that a digital movie was possible, even back in the 1960s. One of the guys was like, when I was in school in the 1960s, I knew a digital movie would someday be possible because the computers would just get better and better and better. And they already knew about Moore's Law, even back then, that computers were doubling at some rate in terms of numbers of, well, back then it was memory cores, but the amount of memory on a computer was getting better and better every year, right? And the same thing is happening here. We know that sometime in the next decade, this is going to be a little tiny computer chip on the edge of my glass, right? That this is going to shrink right into, a little cube sitting on my glass, or a little cube sitting behind my ear, right? Something like that. We're just a little early on that flipping process. It's getting there, but it's not quite good enough for human beings to feel comfortable with it on their face all the time. It's still too big and too heavy, and the batteries are not lasting long enough, and there's still too much heat coming off the GPUs that are needing to fire for all those polygons to go. All of those problems get solved sometime in the next decade. I can't promise you the exact date, but sometime in the next decade, all of those problems get solved, because like Apple just announced they're going to go to 5 nanometer chips. Well, sometime in the next decade, they're going to go all the way down to 1 nanometer, right? So the computer that's this big today is going to shrink by 1/5, right? And do the same thing, right? So like I said, these AirPods have more computer on them than an iPhone 4 did, right? And they're little tiny things, right? the same thing is going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years. And so we're going to see products in the next 5 to 10 years that are really mind-blowing and that really let you do amazing things and bring you major new advances and major new speech recognition features as well. I'm starting to see some real breakthroughs coming in about 2 years on speech recognition. So, yeah.
Well, Robert Scoble always has great insight, and love having you
We're
on to talk
just
about these
waiting.
topics.
It's painful to wait. I know it is. I've been predicting Apple's been doing these glasses forever, and it's like another 2 years. All right, fine.
Or 5. We don't know.
Whatever the
Robert,
date is, it's coming, right?
that's right. Robert Scoble, Chief Strategy Officer at Infinite Retina. If somebody wants to connect with you, maybe they've got more questions about this topic, how can they do that?
I'm on all the social networks, but I focus my professional life on Twitter and LinkedIn. So Robert Scoble on either one of those, Scobleizer on either one of those is the best place.
That's right, the Scobleizer. Thanks again, Robert. And if you
Thanks.
guys want to find more of my interviews, you can do that right here or go to tonyahall.net. Thanks for watching.